Well, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. And what a lovely morning. Again. Another lovely morning. I'm just going to stay in third gear along here because we don't need to go too fast down the country roads. The National Farmers Union has just released a countryside code, which they've sent to all their members, of which I am one. So it's really doesn't. It's nothing. It could be a subset of the highway code. It's all about just being careful around tractors and respecting horses and not speeding down country lanes. Funnily enough, this sort of country lane is precisely the sort of country lane that everybody does speed down, and the reason is that there are very few openings on either side. In other words, when you've got trees down one side and trees down the other side, you can go up to say 50, or some people go even higher than that, because it's like it's a protected environment. They're in an alley. Now, what was I doing? Oh, let's see if I can turn these off. I was having a look at the YouTube stats yesterday, and not that I'm chasing stats. I don't chase stats. I got, everybody says, oh, like, subscribe, and blah, blah, blah at the beginning of every YouTube thing. And that's because they're trying to get, to the point where they've got enough people watching to be able to get some revenue from their little hobby, activity, whatever. But that's not my intention at all. So, I've always said I don't care whether you... Well, it'd be nice if you'd sort of interested a bit, then you might like to subscribe. But I found from my stats that most people watch for, I think, at the most 5 minutes, these things, and then the viewership drops off a lot. So, and that's weird, because like today, the first 5 minutes of what I'm talking about is absolute rubbish. It's not, I'm talking about whether or not my central heating's broken down or something. Not at all about. So maybe that some people are watching it because they like the soap opera side of these regular installments, but not at all interested in the dentistry side, which is fine. I don't care. But believe me, once recently, I think I did an episode entitled "The State," which was all about. Yes, I think it was the one about the Chancellor's, or the Bank of England's decision whether to lower interest rates, or allow them to go lower, and risk reduce the economy and reduce the cost of government borrowing, but not have to worry about runaway inflation, and possibly going into a recession, or a stagflation, as they call it, stagnant economy with inflation, or the alternative, which is to increase. Oh, let me get this right. Hang on. Can't concentrate while I'm going round junctions. Yeah, so increase interest rates puts a downward pressure on inflation, and but it increases the cost of going into recession, and it also increases the cost of government borrowing. Whereas if they put them down, it increases the risk of inflation, and reduces the economy bit, and reduces the cost of government borrowing. That's how it all works, okay? Just remember that. I'm not going to explain it all again, okay? That's it. I'm just going to assume that you know that now. So, and what we said was that they were a fork in the road, didn't we? And the idea being that they chose the fork of lowering interest rates and reducing the cost of government borrowing, reducing the economy a bit because the Chancellor's going on about growth, but not really caring too much about inflation, which the government doesn't mind. As far as the government's concerned, that's exactly the right decision, because they get a double positive effect from that. So not only can they refinance their debt at lower rates than they would have been able to otherwise, but they also the economy is more active with lower rates, and therefore there's less chance of them having trouble with tax receipts and stuff like that, because nobody's got any money. So So what we've seen today is inflation going up from 2.5% to 3%, which is absolutely not the right direction as far as the government's concerned. And the Bank of England borrowed this 2% target off of the Federal Reserve in the United States, who themselves borrowed it off of the New Zealand, I think New Zealand Federal Bank. And they sent 2% as a maximum target, not as an actual target that they wanted, but as a ceiling on interest rates. And then the Federal Reserve said, well, we're going to target 2%. And then when it went above 2%, they said, well, we're going to, we've had it below 2% for a while, so it doesn't matter if we have it above 2% for a while, we'll just average 2%. And then, of course, in the UK, it shot up to 10%, 11%. So, and there's no talk now about, well, all this old guff about it being transitory, inflation being transitory, and Jerome Powell going on about it being transitory in the United States. It's not. Inflation's not transitory, and inflation is embedded now. It's embedded. And if you're involved in, and we're going to have another big shock in April, because all my patients who are coming in, I had a chap in the other day who sells double glazing, and he said that they're going to have to put the cost of the double glazing up in April, and that's without working out what they're going to get in the way of input costs from the double glazing. The plastic suppliers, they've got to have input cost increases on top of their increases. So, and they're going to have to put their prices up to account for all the increase in the national living wage, as it's called now, and the increase in employers' national insurance per employee. And just to quickly recap, okay, minimum wage is a very bad thing, because it's the hurdle at which you have to jump to employ someone. So supposing you could employ someone at £8 an hour and give them valuable training on the job and give them the discipline to come into work and turn up on time and how to use the computer and stuff like that, but the living wage is £12 an hour, then you can't employ that person. And only adding £8 an hour. I don't think employees quite realise this, that they're paid what they're worth. In fact, I know for a fact they don't understand that they're paid what they're worth. So, for example, everyone's saying, "Oh, I should be paid more," but the only way really to get paid more is just to leave the job you're in and get a better paid job. It's only this mobility between jobs that puts pressure on employers to put wages up. No employer is going to put wages up if he's workforce has been working for him for 25 years. That's a sign that the wages are about right for the job. There may be people who think that they deserve more, but they will only get paid what the job, in terms of how much value they add to the job, and also what competition there is for the job. And of course, the National Health Service take full advantage of this. They sell these jobs as, why don't you be a carer? Why don't you be a nurse? In terms of the job satisfaction that you might get from that, as part of the pay packet. So in other words, instead of getting £20 an hour, why don't you get £15 an hour plus the satisfaction of knowing that you're wiping somebody's bum every day? And of course, it doesn't work quite so much because the wages are so low now relatively to things like prices and mortgages that the jobs in the care sector now are so, there are so few staff now to do so much work. They've been pared to the bone in terms of workload that employers are going to get a shock. I think that it's going to be more and more difficult to find good people, and this affects us in dentistry because although we've always prided ourselves on, certainly when I was a young dentist, taking on staff that were academically not very bright, perhaps didn't do well at school, but loved a vocational job. They could come and work as a dental nurse or something and you would train them on the job, and on the first job they learn how to mix cement on and change the bibs and empty the mouthwash and stuff like that. And a lot of them went on to have very happy lives and rewarding lives, as dobbing in and out of the dental profession, which you can do as a nurse. You can take a break to have a baby and then come back to it. You can move to a different part of the country and be sure that there'll be a dental surgery somewhere in the area that's always looking for an experienced dental nurse. And as an experienced dental nurse, you can jump to the front of the queue of applicants. If someone puts in an advert for a dental nurse, he might get 30 replies, say, of which he's only going to look at the 2 that are already got a lot of experience as dental nurses. It's going to save them a lot of training up, isn't he? But then Pam Swain and the BADN paid to that by insisting that all dental nurses must be registered, and so we lost a lot of nurses out of the profession because they'd been grandfathered in, and then they took a break and let their registration lapse, and then they were told that they couldn't. Then the grandfather scheme or the grandmother scheme had ended by then, and they couldn't come back in without retaking the whole exam all over again. And so they quite rightly, in my opinion, told the BADN and the GDC where they could stick their yellow belts, and they were lost. All these really experienced nurses were lost to the profession. So now inflation's up at 3%, and there's no pretense that this might be temporary. I was going to let you out then. Why didn't you? People just don't they don't seize the bloke. This bloke's just overtaken me because I was slowed down a bit. He's got in front, and he could have just pulled out there, but no, he's still there. Oh, never mind. I don't mind. I don't mind being in competition with a bunch of losers in life. In fact, I'd prefer it that way. So, and the other thing you can do when you're looking at consumer price inflation, this is so brilliant. You don't understand how brilliant this is, okay? Now, I know I blather on about stuff, and you say, oh, well, God, he's up at 5 o'clock every morning, checking the business news and stuff like that, which I am, I do. I go to bed early, I get up early, and I get my fingers on all the pulses before I get out of bed. But this idea, like for example, the idea that inflation is not simply consumer price inflation now is a massive revolution, and it's been brought about by the information sharing on the internet, mainly in forums like Reddit and stuff like that. But the younger generation now quite well understand that the Bank of England cashing IOUs from the government and creating money out of nowhere causes inflation in the money supply. And that's the original definition of inflation. It's having more money than you need for the amount of goods and services that are being produced. And that is not consumer price inflation, which is a completely different thing. Consumer price inflation is a complete... I'm going to get in the queue today. Look, just to show you I can be a good boy. The queue's not that long, and I'm nice and early, so I'm not going to do a sneaky nip. So yeah, so now when you talk about inflation, people are saying consumer price inflation's going up, and when they talk about monetary supply inflation, the M2 money supply. There's an ambulance coming up the other way. Can you see it? I bet that's going to be there just as I arrive. I'm going to have to hold up the traffic on the roundabout to let it through. Here we go. There we go. Now, you see, that's another good point. You see how far in advance I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen. I suspected it might happen, and I thought, knowing me, it probably would happen. And then in the event, it actually did happen, didn't it? So he's on his way with someone in the back. Probably someone who hasn't had the cancer therapy that they need. He's being taken away, going up the chimney. So anyway, good news. I've got my... I had a blood test on Friday. Bastards, they lured me in. They said it was a liver function test. Well, I don't know anything about having a liver function test. They said, you need to come in for a liver function test. And then my nurse said to me, it's about 3 months now. You should have another HbA1c diabetes test now. So I sent them an email, and they wrote back and said that this is a clerical email, and it doesn't go through to a clinician, and so you'll have to use our online consultation form. So I went on their website and tried to use their online consultation form, and it says, no, we're closed now. I can't even believe it. An online consultation web to reserve, just to send some information into the surgery about your medical condition. And it's only open 7 till 2. They literally, you cannot even fill it in. So I copied and pasted all these notices saying that we're closed, and sent them back to this clerk. And then the next day I did the online form, and they said, oh yeah, we did that blood test for you Saturday. And I said, I didn't come in Saturday. You sure you got the right notes? And they were like, yeah. It's like, what's happened is I've had it on the Friday, and so they've sent it off on the Saturday probably. Or they got it back on the Saturday, I don't know. Anyway, they said they did the test on the Saturday when they took the blood on the Friday. So, and then, and all this time it's taken me to go on this website and go on that website and register using, and go on the NHS app, and being told that my GP surgery doesn't accept messages through the NHS app. The whole thing is wasted. It must have wasted at least half an hour of my time, and it wastes their time as well, because they've had to deal with like 3 or 4 emails from me when they shouldn't have. And then, and that, not only that, but there's the matter of consent. I mean, I've had an HB test and I didn't consent to it. I didn't even know I was having it done. The sheer disregard, the blatant effrontery of just taking my blood and using it for whatever the hell they like. They could ring me up and say I've had an HIV test, and I wouldn't know. I'm sure that's the one test they must tell you that they're taking, because the results of it, if it came back positive, you'd need to be counselled, wouldn't you, over what might happen if it comes back positive. And I'm sure that they're not allowed to do that. But any other test, apparently, you go along under false pretenses, think you're having a liver function test, and you're not. You're having a diabetes glucose test. Oh, bus driver. I'd love to drive a bus. That's my only bucket list thing, is to drive a bus. I'd like to drive a coach, actually, more, because I can put all my friends on it and we could go places and have fun, Go to Epsom races one day and go to Formula 1 race the next, and then all go and just check in a hotel somewhere, have a laugh. I'm a bit old for it now. I'd need to get an HGV Class 2 medical, which I'm sure I could do. Let's face it, I've got a pilot's licence. I should be able to get an HGV2 medical to drive a bus. Mind you, I suppose that pilots tend to kill themselves, don't they? I'd be the only fatality if I crashed the plane. Whereas if I was driving a bus, you could... It's like... Bob Monk has his favourite joke, wasn't it? He says, I want to die quietly in my sleep, not shouting and screaming in sheer terror like the passengers on my father's bus. Right, okay. So, complete load of twaddle today. I was going to talk a bit about I've got some interesting dentistry coming in, but perhaps I'll talk about that on the way back. But anyway, you've got something to listen to today, haven't you? I assume you have this on in the background. I hope you do. I hope you're not concentrating on this. All right. Nice to talk to you. Bye.